You are listening to Arts on the Air, a bi-weekly-ish interview show dedicated to Savannah, Georgia's artists, musicians, and authors. Each episode will feature a guest in conversation about their philosophy, practice, and current projects, as well as their thoughts on the state of the arts in our community of Savannah. Our theme music is a clip of Summer Nights by the Eric Jones Trio. It's provided by our friend Mark Chesanow, who plays with the Eric Jones Trio. Hey everyone, welcome to Arts on the Air. This is Tamara Garvey, and I have the pleasure of sitting down with Jazz Howington today. Welcome, Jazz.
Thanks, I'm so happy to be here.
So excited to finally sit down and speak to you. I've met you a couple times at your Cedar House studio, but we've never really talked, so I'm very excited. I'm going to read a little bit of your bio from your website. Jazz is a versatile painter, muralist, and illustrator. It started her career in 2012. You have a degree from SCAD Illustration from 2011. Her current work focuses on capturing authentic queer relationships, affection, and adoration, and themes in her work are bold color, negative space, and degree of finish. And you have a day job in UX design right now. So what brought you to Savannah originally?
I went to SCAD in 2007 to 2011 and ended up moving to DC where I met my wife. And we lived there for a long time, and she's from Hawaii.
Oh.
So we both actually kind of prefer warm climates. I went to high school in Florida and then SCAD. So we're just used to warmer places. We were really hating the snow and the cold. And so we were just looking for a slower pace too. And our jobs sort of let us work remotely during the pandemic, and we were like, why are we here? Why are we
exactly
here when we don't have a connection to this place? And we used to come to Savannah a lot for vacations, and we really loved it. And we actually got married here in 2019, and we thought, oh, well, that'd be really cute. Maybe we'll retire here someday. But the company I worked for had a real estate app, and it kept looking up Savannah zip code as a way to test the app. I was doing quality assurance. And I saw a house. We came down. We just wanted to check out the house. Let's just look at it, and we decided to move here.
Wow. So
a
confluence of events pointing you here.
Yeah, exactly.
Had you moved to DC for your UX job?
I actually had moved to DC because my dad worked in DC at the Pentagon, and so I was like, after college, moved back in with the parents.
Okay.
I was doing grad school at the time, and ended up getting my first kind of real job there at a law firm. In the graphic design department.
Can you explain a little, is UX design, is that it's sort of front, like on a website, it's the front end design, like the aspects that you see? Is that what it is?
So user experience design has sort of gone through a lot of different names and represents a lot of different disciplines actually, but it's really, it is designing what you see in the front end, but it's also thinking about the whole experience from end to end, like whatever the person is who's going to a website or using an app, what they're going to experience from the moment they, first download the app or go on the website to accomplish whatever task that they're doing.
Okay.
So
it seems it's very related to illustration, because that also is about trying to depict some kind of narrative or feeling or whatever you're trying to get across to the viewer.
Yeah, I think it's nice because it's sort of this intersection between psychology and like understanding human behavior, but through the lens specifically with technology.
Yeah.
And then also design and hierarchy and all of the traditional sort of graphic design elements that you get in print, and translating that into a digital experience. And then so it's a little bit creative, but also a little bit problem solving.
Yeah.
So it scratches a little bit different part of my brain sometimes. We do a lot of research and talking to customers and trying to understand their pain points. So
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
When you first started at SCAD, were you always intended to major in illustration, or did you have to try different things around? How'd that go?
Oh, I went to SCAD thinking I was going to major in fashion.
Okay.
And I had a drawing professor, Warren Scott Thorpe. Shout out to him. Who I just really enjoyed, and I would go and sit just chatting with him during his office hours. And one day he looked at me and he said, "What's your major?" And I said, "Fashion." And he said, "You're too nice. What else?" And just kind of dismissed like my whole life's goal at that point. And I was like, well, I was considering illustration as a minor. He's like, do that instead. You're going to like that.
I know fashion is very cutthroat.
Yeah.
Is that the major just theme?
I just wanted to
going into it basically.
I liked the self-expression part of fashion.
Yeah.
I liked like the And I don't know, it's just something that, like, I think as a child I just really liked exploring. But he was right. Like, I know
Really?
I had fashion friends, and like I would have done terribly in that industry.
Interesting. Were you kind of early in it when this conversation happened?
Yeah. I had like one really terrible conversation with like one or two of the fashion professors at like the not career fair, the majors fair.
Yeah.
And so like just having that conversation with him just solidified kind of what I was already feeling, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you just transitioned right over to
Seamlessly.
illustration, and then that seemed fine.
Yeah, I just wanted to draw. Honestly, like my whole life's goal was just to like draw and maybe paint since I was a kid.
What were you, I know that I majored in illustration as well. So a lot of the major is like, they're specifically taking you through all these different materials and techniques, and it's not toward the end where you get to like kind of go off on your own and choose what you want to depict and how you want to depict it. Was it easy for you to figure out like a style and the materials you liked, or were you always testing things?
Oh yeah, no. I like to tell people that art school is not a place where you figure yourself out as an artist. Art school is a place where you learn a craft and you learn the skills that you need to find yourself later, but it's not the place where you usually find yourself as an artist, in my opinion. I don't know a lot of people that still do the same type of art that they did when they were in school, right? And it's good to learn the craft, but that's really what it is.
I felt like that too by the end, even like senior year and the pieces you're doing for a portfolio. I had like a few things that I ever did that I thought turned out really nicely, but the majority of the things I was making I still thought were kind of bad.
Yeah. I think also art school opens you up into other artists and kind of thinking about art in a way that opens your mind to all these different styles and different reasons. Like, you know, going into school, like I didn't really love abstract art or anything that wasn't sort of more classical. And as I learned, I actually really appreciate things that had more like more contemporary art that has more meaning behind it, right? Like I never really loved Picasso, but when I saw Guernica and someone explained it to me, I was like, oh, okay, I get it, right? And so it's sort of, I did love that. I was an art history minor because of that. Because I really liked understanding like the meaning behind the art and like why people chose to paint what they painted. And how things around the time of that it was created influenced what got made. And
when you were graduating with your illustration degree, were you thinking at that point that you were going to like attempt to right away just become a freelance commission illustrator? Were you thinking about getting into the design field?
Honestly, no. I mean, I graduated during kind of still the remnants of that recession, and it was pretty difficult.
2011 is when you graduated.
But I actually ended up getting a job at a company that got pretty big called Custom Ink.
Okay.
Shortly after, and Custom Ink was sort of like a t-shirt, apparel, online merchandise. They had one of the better options for buying t-shirts online. And I ended up getting into this like very niche position of being the custom illustrator, one of the 6 custom illustrators that they had there. And that was really fun because it was, I kind of assume it's kind of like what being a tattoo artist feels like when you're first starting out. Like people want the most random stuff. And so you just kind of got a mixed bag of anything and everything.
Is this so people would describe to you what they wanted done and you had to translate that and draw it for them?
Yeah, believe it or not, they offered that service for free.
That seems very challenging and difficult.
It was great. I mean, I still have some of the images today. Like there was this one, I remember, I'll never forget it. They were like willing to pay for 4 colors, which 4 colors for screen printing is a lot.
Okay.
And they had like purple sweatshirts. So like I got to have like a really cool background color to work with. And they were like, we want this post-apocalyptic desert scene with this, we want a Bigfoot. We want this old sort of donut shop. We want the Bigfoot to be running out with the box of donuts in his hand. And then I want another Bigfoot being sucked up to the sky by aliens.
It's a lot to depict on a shirt.
To
fit in.
And that was always the fun part, was the challenge and the constraints that the sort of screen print process and the 14 by 16 or I can't remember exactly the dimensions, but there was only so much space you could work with on the shirt, and so.
And then is this to order like a bunch of shirts for employees or something like that?
This particular shirt was for just a group of dudes who went on a group trip together every year and like got shirts to commemorate it. Yeah,
awesome.
so they did have a minimum that they had to buy, but
yeah. But they happen to have this like big budget for the 4 colors.
Yeah,
I love that.
They're just going all out.
Where was this company based?
This is it. This company is based in Northern Virginia.
Okay.
And like Fairfax is kind of where we ended up living.
So you were living in DC and would you like commute and go to this office and do your work there? Were you working from home?
Oh no, I was in Fairfax. We could not afford to live in DC proper.
Okay.
But I did commute. It was like 25-ish minutes most days. But yeah, I was definitely in office, and they did a lot of really good training at that company. So I really learned like Adobe Illustrator really well, and the print process. So
yeah, how was that? So you're in an office and you're like hearing what people want you to depict, and then you're sitting in this office environment doing art all day. That seems like an interesting environment. Would you sketch and then you'd move to the computer? What was your process like?
Actually that's how I transitioned into UX design, because when I started on the team of graphic specialists, we were using paper and pen or whatever the artist felt comfortable with. Yeah. Taking a picture, usually with our phone, or scanning it. And then taking it into Illustrator and redrawing it, retracing it for the screen print process, and then, kind of finishing the artwork that way. Okay. It was like a 6-step process that took a decent amount of time, and we actually got paid for our productivity, like how many orders we could get through in a day. And so I made a request, actually went to Adobe Max to hear from the engineers, like what's the best hardware to use to be faster. And we ended up getting these Wacom Cintiqs, which was before the iPad Pro and Pencil got as good as it is now, and did a lot of comparison. Anyway, so we got Cintiqs and we were working a lot faster, and so that was sort of my first journey into thinking about like how things are done and the experience that someone has when they're trying to do something with software.
This is very cool. I mean, just to hear that like right out of school that you had this job at this company that is hiring and paying for people to sit there and like do commercial art for them in-house seems like very verified. And
yeah, it was great. I think since then though, they have like fired most of their artists or laid them off, and like are handling a lot of things offshore. So it's kind of sad. It used to be this really amazing company, and I think it's since then not been so great for the artists that worked there. And
just all about productivity and capitalism.
Yeah. Wow. As with most things, just kind of ruined it.
So in the years that you were living in Northern Virginia and then you eventually moved back to Savannah, were you like painting in your spare time, or?
I tried. I was doing pretty well, but there was a good like 4 or 5 year period where I kind of stopped painting, because I was, I was doing freelance graphic design. I had my full-time job, and then I would, at one point I was working at Muse Paint Bar as like a wine paint instructor. I was just trying to like pay off my student loans and make ends meet, and
trying to do creative jobs as your day job.
And so then you're just like creatively tapped, and that's why I think I liked moving into UX design, because it's still creative, but just different enough where like it still had a little bit left over for me at the end of the day. So actually when we moved here was when I really felt like I could start unlocking more of my creative side and do art that mattered to me versus like for someone else. I think that's the hard part about illustration, is you get paid to make art for other things and to literally communicate some kind of idea or message on behalf of some capitalist situation, right? So you don't really get to express yourself in the same way or work on things that matter to you.
So it was in the years since you've been in Savannah the second time that you've gotten back into your personal painting practice.
Yeah. And I'm actually not like trained as a painter, right? Like I was an illustrator, and so like I'm simultaneously sort of training myself how to paint and getting into what I actually want to be painting as far as the subject matter.
Right. Be more of just like a fine artist.
Yeah.
So I studied illustration too, and I graduated just a few years before you. And I remember like there was, a part where you're working with acrylic paints, but it was never on canvas. It would just be on small things, board or paper. So you working on these large scale canvases in acrylic is really, really new. Like I guess you had to teach yourself this entire practice. How did that develop for you?
I'm ever since I was a kid, I really loved like getting books and just sort of going through, different methods or just like having someone who's done this thing before kind of explain some tips or tricks. Like you don't need a lot of guidance or education, but like knowing just a couple of things. Like I remember reading this acrylic maker book. I can't remember exactly the artist or the name of the book even. Oops. But when I started painting again, I just sort of bought this book, and it had everything from like materials to color palettes to anything that you might need to learn about, and also like brands of paint and like the differences between the viscosity of this one and this one. And like it really helped me sort of narrow some things down and not have to waste as much money or time figuring some things out. And so
it's kind of amazing, a specific kind of material. It could be something, like you said, as small as like how runny or how thick a paint is. The different people, it appeals to them, and you can like waste a lot of time struggling and making things that you don't like at all, and maybe it was just something as small as that.
Yeah, and then, of course, I'll like YouTube things when I get to certain stages or when I have specific questions. Like, I really do want the work to be somewhat archival and like last over time, and I'm using a lot of neons, and I know the light fastness isn't great for neon paints. And so I'm trying to think of ways to kind of slow the fading process and sort of I'm like thinking through all of these things and some of the chemistry of it all. And so just, being able to YouTube some basic things around, varnishes and things like that, things you don't have to worry about as an illustrator, right?
Right.
Making something archival. So that's been really great. And also even being at Cedar House, there are some artists there that I've got to learn from, Liz Tecca especially. I've spent some time talking to Liz, and just little bits and pieces here and there. It's just been really, really nice to just kind of keep learning.
I didn't know that about the neon paints, that they tended to not be as archival, and I wanted to talk to you about them because it looks very, very cool. So that's good information for people to have.
Yeah.
I saw on your website that in 2023 you had a solo show at Cedar House.
Yeah.
Were you already renting a studio there, or did that kick off your studio practice?
I was renting there. So I first learned about Cedar House because one of the artists, Mackenzie Alexander, was holding a figure drawing, safe space figure drawing. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know this place existed.
Yeah.
And they happened to have a studio open. It was the garage studio out back.
Is that one big studio?
Yeah, it's like one little big garage space.
Cool.
And it was so great because I was able to, work pretty big in there and also blast my music and not worry about bothering anyone.
Yeah, no shared rules with anyone.
Yeah, and it's also a dog-friendly studio. Like, not just the garage, the whole Cedar House is dog-friendly, so I'd bring my dog.
What kind of dog we're talking about?
He's a mutt. He's like, he kind of looks like a fox, and I have no idea what he is. Maybe part corgi, part something else. He's so sweet. He's an old man, and he'll just sit there and lay down and hang out. I call him my studio assistant.
That's very nice. So you'd hang out with the music blaring. And
well, I don't blare it when he's in there as much. But yeah, he falls asleep. He's old and he sleeps a lot. And
what a nice guy.
Yeah, he's just chill. He has a little bit of separation anxiety, so it kind of works out for him.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I got a studio there after that figure drawing session, and then I because of my like severe ADHD, I knew that if I was actually going to get back into painting, I needed to have a goal and a deadline. So I set up the show more to like actually get myself to do the things and to work on something meaningful. Yeah. Because it's so easy to let the daily grind just like keep you from doing the things that you want to do. And
so from the very beginning, you've set up this show in 2023, you're working toward it. Yeah. Did you know already that you wanted to do this largish scale, like full portraits of people?
Yeah, I did. I knew that's what I wanted to do, but I did not have the confidence. And so I started kind of small with these little hand drawings and these little fabric studies, and like the hands actually have become somewhat of an obsession. I'm still doing hands.
Hands are difficult to draw.
They're my favorite thing. Yeah. They're like my favorite thing. They're so expressive, and people seem to connect with hands in a way. Like when you're drawing a specific portrait of someone, if they don't know the person, it's a little harder to connect with it sometimes, I think. Sometimes it's fine. But for whatever reason, people really connect with hands.
Wow. So you started with hands, and this is so interesting. So you're like basically teaching yourself how to paint these on canvas, and
I'm also experimenting on like wood panel. Like I'm just really trying to figure out what the heck I like doing.
Would you take photos of friends' hands in certain positions and work from photos?
Yeah, I actually put out a call for models and had several people sign up and be part of the project because I really wanted to depict like real relationships, real queer relationships, whether platonic or romantic, because I just found there's sort of a sense of safety and a sense of home in those relationships for the queer community. And it was kind of important for me, like thinking about all of the art as an art history minor. I'm looking back at all the people that got turned into these monumental pieces of art. It's usually like royalty or someone really important, and I just really want to capture those relationships and those people more in art, in my art anyways. Everyday people and their stories, and the relationship especially, because I think sometimes even when queer people are depicted in art and history, like the queerness gets erased, right? Whether or not it's like the posing or the attire and everything else. So I'm really hoping this is going to be a lifelong project for me. Like I don't think it's ever going to be done. And I just keep working at it in different aspects, basically. Yeah, right. And so like the hands was just like a sort of an entry point, because I kept noticing in these photo shoots like the people in their hands and like how they would hold hands or how they would relate to each other. Like you could still see the relationship even in just the hands. Yeah. And that's kind of how my like obsession with hands started. Oh, I really like that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and there's can be a lot of like not just a hand but two hands touching, and there's like infinite number of positions that two hands can be in touching, and it's it's very poignant. Yeah. So you were doing those, and then on your website also, and I've seen this at your Cedar House studio. I think they all are squares of these fabric studies. And they're really beautifully depicted. They're very technical, and it was iridescent fabric that you used, which seems very difficult, very challenging. So you really set up this, everybody knows that fabric is hard to paint anyway. So I love seeing this whole series of these squares next to each other, and the colors are very beautiful. And so at the same time, kind of, you were doing the hands and the fabric? Yeah, well, the fabrics was first. I was I need to get comfortable painting again. I just got one of those 8 packs of canvases from Blick or something that was on sale, like the 8x8s, and I was like, I can experiment on these. And I chose the I don't know, I walked into Joann's, I was like, what's the queerest fabric I can find that's not actually rainbows? And it just jumped out at me. And then also I was, it is challenging, and I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to do this, right? But that's kind of how I felt about painting in general. Like, I was a little nervous about, coming from an illustration background and moving into fine art, and I was like, let's just try it. I'm kind of the type of person that wants to tackle my weaknesses, so another weakness I felt like I had all this time is just color. I've been really afraid of color throughout my whole life. Like, I would much prefer to work in black and white. That's very comfortable to me. And so I was like, let's just go for all the things that make me really uncomfortable. Yeah, you really threw it. I just threw myself into the deep end of the pool, really. Were you getting, sparkly paint to depict this? Or is it just sort of, it's very, lavender and pink and blue. It's, fairy colors. Yeah, no, I just got inspired by the fabric. I did get some, iridescent paints that I started to play with just to see. And I was like, no, this is kind of cheating. And so I didn't use any of the iridescent paint in the end. And this is kind of where I looked at some of those books, and I watched some YouTube videos, and I found underpainting as a means of, and glazes, and you can glaze with acrylics. People think that you can't. They're like oils and this and oils that, and oils seem great. I'm afraid of them. Really? I really want to get into them, but it's one of those things that I really want to go towards, but you can do so much with acrylic. For sure. With the I don't like the word, but the extender. Yeah, I'm gonna call it an extender. To make the time slow down. And some open acrylics, things like that. So I found ways to make acrylics work for me. While I kind of work up the courage to do oils. Because I guess the point of oils is that since it takes a long time to dry, is that you can blend things in together and have these really soft gradients. And acrylics, the standard way to use it, they dry really fast, which has its own benefit. But so you're not necessarily getting these soft gradients. So if you use these extending fillers into the paint, you can make it mimic that and still. Yeah, but then it still doesn't take too long. And I'm sure if I learned oils, I would probably be able to achieve what I want. Yeah. But for now, I've just been really enjoying also the fastness of acrylics and being able to start and finish something in a day. Yeah, and oils, that has its own litany of other issues where just the toxicity of the fumes and cleaning the brushes is a lot more of a process. You have to get also different materials to clean things. With acrylics, you just are using soap and water. Right, and I have really bad asthma, and severe ADHD. And so the quickest and dirtiest I can do something is probably the best, and the less fumes I have in the studio, probably better. Yeah. So it's kind of working for me right now, but we'll see where it goes.
So this is cool. So you had a period where you're doing you did this fabric studies, you did the hand studies, and then at what point did you move from the back studio in Cedar House into your...
Oh, actually, that was after the show.
Oh, okay. So you were back there for
all the preparation for the show was in the back studio and in the garage, and it was great. It was actually kind of terrifying trying to get some of those big pieces done, but the whole point, I knew I wanted to work big, right? Like, working big was always the goal.
And, like, what size are we talking about?
I mean, for this one, I think the biggest one I've done so far is 48 by 72.
Oh, that's really, really big.
Yeah.
But for the show that you did in 2023.
Yeah, 48 by 72 was the largest. I think some of them were like 24 by 48 or 36 by 48. Like, there was sort of a variation.
They're very rectangular, it sounds like.
Some of them, yeah. But some of them were vertical.
Okay.
And some of them were, like, one was horizontal. And so it was all different. So I had, like, I think at least 4 big ones. I have a triptych that I'm still in progress.
Yeah.
That I ended up showing, like, the in-progress work of.
Oh, that's cool.
During the show, and then a couple of like smaller portraits. I did a couple, like this really cute couple, Kristen and Morgan. They live here in Savannah, and they're like two heads sort of facing each other.
Yeah,
I did that one.
So you went from doing this like 8x8 size of the fabric studies to like doing full body portraits and way, way, way bigger. That's a big jump suddenly to get ready for this show.
Yeah, but honestly, once I tackled that iridescent fabric, I was like, I'm ready. I'm ready for whatever comes.
That's so funny. Yeah, that was the big, big challenge. I love that.
Yeah.
So did you, from the beginning, did you issue this sort of like call for people to come to you and model?
Yeah. And I think it's really important. So I offered to pay models. Some of them didn't accept payment. Some of them just wanted like a print or something later. Some of them did accept the payment, sort of been like a mixed bag. I told him, I was like, there's no guarantee that I'm going to finish by any certain time, but if I do, like, I'll reach back out to you. And so that's kind of where it's been. And actually recently I'm going to probably do another call for models at some point soon, because I really would like to do more, but it takes me so long to finish things because I'm not a full-time artist right now. So I just try to set up the expectation of like, this will happen eventually.
What was your sort of learning process like? I'm sure it was like a learning curve of when you call these people in your studio and they're going to sit for you and do like a photo session. And then how did that, like, did you learn certain things of how to make that go well and things you needed and ways to make them comfortable or whatever?
So funnily enough, when I put the first call for models out, I didn't have the studio yet because I knew I'd wanted to do this project. So I had the idea for the project before I had the studio, so I invited people over to my house or to the park. So some people opted to meet me at the park because I'm just some random stranger at Forsyth Park, and then some opted to just come to our house. And my wife was like, "You're inviting strangers into our home?" And I was like, "Well, yes, but you'll be here, so it's fine, and it really was fine, right? I think people just like art, want to connect, want to be part of something, and that's what's been really beautiful about it. And I still get people who are interested in the project. So probably going to be, like I said, be doing another photo shoot. But I think I'm also wanting to connect with like local photographers to help with the reference images and maybe pay them, because the reference image really does matter. And I did find that like my iPhone images are maybe not the best for reference photos. And I do have a nicer camera, but I'm really not great at it. I'm not great at photography.
I can see, especially if you take a photo with your camera and if the ending thing is going to be like 48 inches, you need a lot of detail. You need to fill in a lot of detail to make that big of a painting. Yeah.
I actually just partnered recently this past weekend with a friend who I used to work with, who's a photographer in New York City, and she does a lot of like pole dance photography and like other things like that, and she's willing to help me and partner with me on something that we're calling pen pals, where she's going to take some photos with models and reference images, and I'm going to paint something from that same photo, and we're going to try to have a show at some point. So that's my first branch into connecting with photographers to see how I can like keep the reference images higher quality, because it really does matter.
That's really smart. That's a really good way to do it.
Yeah,
and then she'll have the excitement of seeing her photo depicted as a painting. It'll be really fun for her. Right. Yeah, we've talked about like even like adjusting the structure so that she gets something if the painting ever really sells, things like that. So like
I think that collaboration and that connection is so important in art, like with other artists. So I'm excited to try to replicate that process with other photographers, other artists too.
You could show them like
side by side. That's the goal. That's the
plan.
plan.
Cool, yeah.
Yeah.
And if the person can come and like hang out near their paintings as well.
Yeah.
Like the live person. Yeah. When you would get people in front of you, would you like have ideas for how you want them to pose, or are you just like, hey guys, start interacting, I'm going to start taking photos, and then you just find like, how did that go? Because to describe, and I'll post like images of paintings too, but it's people in kind of like ethereal poses, and sometimes they're kind of fantastical body situations.
Well, so some of the people, I really wanted it to be authentic. Some people are natural, like they model already in other capacities, like for clothes or because that's something that they're interested in. So like if they have modeling experience, then they just kind of jump in and kind of know what to do, right? Some of the couples, they just, I didn't give them a lot of direction. I was like, just like pretend I'm not here and just chat or talk. Like if they were unsure, like that's the kind of direction I would give. It's like, just tell me about how you met, and actually, so the most of the shoot is me just asking them about their relationship, whether they're friends or lovers or married or not. And so it would just be a lot of just like me asking questions and then just sort of being. And I kind of like that. I mean, I like the posed ones because some of the posed ones make great compositions, right, for a painter. But one of my favorite ones, the largest one I did, were these two best friends, Chris and Violet. And they're trans, and they both transitioned around the same time in college. And when they came over, I was like, they're like, what do you want us to do? And I said, just like hang out as if I'm not here, but also tell me how you met and all these things, right? So they're telling me all about their friendship. And Violet said, we're just so bestie and it's lovely. And that actually ended up becoming the name of the painting. And then they just hopped on the bed back to back. And they're like, sometimes we just hang out like this, we'll be on our phones. And like that was the painting, like, right? And it was a beautiful composition because they kind of make a heart shape with the way that they were like sitting there with their legs tucked. But
it was just happenstance.
It was just how they like, I didn't tell them to pose like that. They just got up there and did that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of taking photos.
I'm just taking photos. Yeah, like probably hundreds and hundreds of photos for each session. And then, that's the other part that people don't see is like a lot of planning. Like I'm an overthinker, so I looked at all these different poses, all these different images, made a bunch of different sketches, like trying to decide which image, like I felt like captured the relationship in a good way, in a way that felt like authentic to them. And I'm still learning, right? Like this isn't like I'm finished or like that, but that was such a good first experience, and getting to know people, and also the vulnerability that they had of just like being willing to share their relationship with me as some random artist who just put up a flyer. It's really beautiful.
And I'm sure at the beginning, like you're taking photos, they probably settle into it after a few minutes where they aren't thinking about that, but at the beginning I'm imagining that like,
oh yeah, the photos at the beginning are rarely the ones that I would end up using.
Exactly. How many of these portraits do you think you've done at this point? These relationship portraits?
Let's see. I've done with the hands, I think I've done at least like 8.
Okay.
Not all of them are the monumental scale. Like some of them are smaller, but like 4 larger works and like 4 sort of hand connection, loving hand series. And then 2 that were just sort of like portraits that kind of faced each other.
How do you design what the backgrounds are going to be?
So far, it's just sort of, I've done a lot of tight cropping. So like not having a lot, but the one where they're on the bed kind of forced me to have, like, I just try to keep it a bed. I didn't try to make it, but also not draw a lot of attention to it. So, I'll leave that a little less finished than the people.
Yeah.
But I have some very large canvases that are waiting for some portraits that are huge.
Really?
And I'm probably going to need to think about the background more for those.
Where do you get your canvases from?
So I ordered this one off of Canvas Lot.
Okay. Is it good? Do you like it?
They're beautiful. I mean, they're great. And you can choose the type of like canvas. I have not learned how to build canvases yet. That is on my to-do list. It was very expensive to buy these large works. I have a plan for them, but it is it was worth it to me to get them in the studio, because now I've invested in this process, and I will be making these monumental works.
You got some skin in the game.
Yeah,
you got
some skin in the game. I have one canvas that's like 48 by 48 right now. That is going to be the first painting I've ever done of me and my wife.
Did that have to be delivered to you on like a big truck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those other ones had to be, they were, I don't know, they're like 60 by 80 something.
Can you, inches. How is it easy to like fit them in the doors and like get them up the stairs and up
to
your studio?
It like required like two people, like my wife and I are to like.
I'm so curious about that. It's like moving furniture at that point.
Yeah, like, and don't ask me how I'm ever going to show them anywhere but Cedar House, because I don't even know how to transport stuff that big. But I'm going to learn, right? Like, I think that's like, again, going into the deep end, like, you can't be afraid of like, I mean, you can be afraid, sorry. You shouldn't let your fear stop you from doing the things you want to do. And that's kind of the like approach I'm taking with this, of like, I don't know how I'm ever going to show these in a gallery. First step, make art. Second step, figure that out. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so at some point you transition, you still have a studio at Cedar House, but you're no longer in this like back detached garage, you're inside. So you're in the house and there's other artists around, which I'm sure that's a whole different dynamic. Now you have other artists around that you can bounce ideas off of.
Yeah.
You have neighbors.
That was a big part of leaving the garage, even though I loved that garage. It's funny, the artist that was in my studio before, I think his name is Joel. I think his last name is Barr, B-A-R-R. And he was this just beautiful, gentle old man. And he was such a good painter. And I used to just wander up there when I was waiting for my stuff to dry, if Joel was around, because he would paint. Not all the artists are there on the weekends, but that's when I'm usually there painting. Okay. And so I would wander up there and talk to Joel about, color and like the meaning of life and just everything in between. And I remember just being so envious of his studio and the natural light. I was like, oh, this is such a beautiful studio. I was like, but I love Joel, so I hope he never leaves, But then, of course, one day I found out that he was moving out. And I was like, Joel, why? But he had another project that he wanted to do. I think he wanted to write more and paint. And not that he'd be painting less, but he had a garage that he said he could work from painting. So he moved out and the studio became available. And I inquired about it and I was able to make it happen. And it's honestly been such a joy. And I've had several commissions since moving into the upper studio. It does help, I think, with people kind of seeing your work and when they come in for those first Fridays or gallery openings. So it's been really great.
Yeah, because I can't think of, I don't know if the person who has the garage studio is usually open, but I don't think I've ever toured that one on one of the days of those receptions.
Yeah, well, I think the person in there now is like an author and then also works on motorcycles. So I don't know how much he opens the studio, but I used to have it open all the time, but no one would wander back there unless I came into the house and told people that I was in in the back. So
yeah, now you have the benefit of people walking through.
Yeah, people just stumble in.
Like I had a time that I walked through and took your card, probably last year or something, and held onto your card.
Yeah, and it's priceless being able to be surrounded by other artists and creative people and people that are attending these events who are interested in art.
Yeah,
it really helps you sort of network in a way that feels authentic and organic.
And I would think, people coming through, like you're looking for couples to model for you, so they can meet you face to face, and you're not just a website that they're answering. But I would think that it's easier to get people through that. Yeah,
I've gotten several people who's followed my Instagram, like, I'm still gonna reach out, and it's gonna probably be like 6 months to a year later. But at some point, I'm gonna reach back out and be like, "Hey, you want to model for that project?"
Yeah, and I should say, and you have a page on your website where people listening, if you're interested, there's like a form to submit to model for you. So it's a rolling thing.
It's a rolling thing.
How did you get started with? So you said that you use, and you have, it's cool on your Instagram, some like works in progress where the underpainting is this neon pink, and then in the finished work, the little bits of the neon pink poke through, and the main colors of it are like these kind of fairy, like Lisa Frank looking colors, these lavender and stuff. How did you get into this color scheme?
Yeah, so most of the underpaintings are actually in like purple, and then the hot pink will happen eventually, like over that. But a lot of the I figured out during the fabric studies that I kind of liked purple as an underpainting color, a little less dull than like the black and white and gray.
Yeah.
But there is a plan to like transition into like some, not realistic colors. I always want the colors to feel more vivid than like what you would get from a photograph or something like that. But I don't know, experimenting with color was important to me. And actually, I think experimenting is one of the most important things to do as an artist. I think it's actually where like creativity really happens, is like when you're just playing with stuff.
You have a happy accident.
Yeah, happy accidents, or like even just like there's things that I do now that I maybe wouldn't, right? And like the purple underpainting was one of them, where I had this sort of fabric and I was like, maybe I should try purple, because I think of the fabric lends itself to that. And then I just really liked having purple as the undercolor, because it was still I'd seen other, you know, like burnt sienna and other types of underpaintings that were not black and white, but I don't know why, I'm like shying away from all the browns and the earth tones, even though I think eventually I'll get into that as well. Yeah. But like for whatever reason, I just felt like I wanted the colors to be happy. I wanted them to be sort of vibrant, like the queer community really is, and have a little like feel like I love that you described it as kind of like sparkly.
Yeah.
Because
it makes me think of a Lisa Frank Trapper Keeper from the 80s.
Yeah, and I love that, because I think when I think of queer joy, that's what I think of.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of fitting for the project.
Is there a thing where a lot of people who do portraits where you use warm colors as the underpainting just to give people like warmth and life in their faces? So if you're using purple and it's a cool color, does it have like almost like an alien-y kind of vibe?
No, like, I mean, what I learned in school is like your shadows and your light highlights should be opposite tones. So like if you have cool darks, then you're going to have warm highlights and vice versa. So that's kind of where I'm like, okay, well, if my shadows are cool, then my lights will be warmer, and that's how I will sort of think about it. And so that's kind of where, like with the purple, I just end up having like cooler shadows and warmer lights. I'm okay with that, actually. Yeah. That might change.
Yeah.
You never know.
What is your favorite part of the painting process? If we say that there's like the modeling and you're taking photos and then you're going through the photos and then you're doing a drawing and then you're working on the painting, what parts of that do you really enjoy, and what parts do you have to like force yourself to get through?
I have to force myself to get through the canvas prep.
Okay.
But I usually do that by bouncing around. I have my studio set up where I have like an easel and then like a big wall easel and then like a desk. And I'm like usually like have like 2 or 3 projects going at once. And so like, or if I only have like an hour or 2 that I can spend in the studio, sometimes I'm like, okay, it's too short of time to really accomplish what I want to accomplish with the painting. So I will go and prep these other canvases or these things over here.
So is that like gessoing and underpainting?
Yeah, gessoing and underpainting and yeah, kind of figuring that out. And then also like it's funny, I really like sketching and mapping and planning the painting in my sketchbook, but then actually going to like sketch it on the canvas is like, sometimes I just have to set up whole days where I'm just sketching stuff onto
that's my least favorite part too.
Because like, you have to plan it out, because the plan is really what's going to make the painting more successful, at least for me.
Yeah.
The better the drawing is, the better the painting will be. But for that large one, the 48 by 72, I had to redraw that like 4 times.
Like redrawing on the canvas?
Yeah. I had to like gesso back over one because I hated it so much.
Do you do a grid? Like from this small piece, do you kind of print it out and make a grid and then translate that to...
Yeah, but my grids are pretty like small, like, or large, I mean. So like I'll do like a 1 foot by 1 foot grid or something. Like really just to map out the key parts or like angles and...
Yeah, so for people listening, like the smaller the grid, I would think the easier to translate that to the drawing. So if it's a large squares of grid, that makes it a little harder on you to do the drawing. You still are like freehanding quite a bit.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm really freehanding most of it. The grid is just to help as like a map to make sure that I'm not like getting the proportions terribly.
Do you do the sketching in charcoal or something kind of dark? What do you do?
Okay, so I was just using a pencil. For a lot, but I also, for some of the paintings I did like a red pencil. Yeah. One of my favorite artists, James Jean, uses like a red pencil. Yeah. And I was like, let me try that.
Well, I think you need something kind of vivid to stand out over the purple or the pink underpainting.
Yeah. But also kind of blends in better. Like I did notice the red eventually, like you don't see it as much through the painting.
Oh, interesting.
And like graphite's a little harder to cover up.
Yeah.
In that way. But if like for some of the commissions I've done recently, like I know where it's going from a color perspective, so I can use the pencil and it's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm still playing with that, still figuring that out.
And then when you start laying down the paint, is that where it just becomes like that's your favorite? It's the best. You're rolling on through, kind of.
Yeah, I think the thing about paint is it's forgiving.
Yeah.
So like if you mess up, you can paint over it.
Yeah, especially acrylic.
Right.
So nice.
So like I just kind of go into it with that mindset of like, if I don't like it, I'll just paint over it.
Yeah.
So that part feels less scary. But my favorite part is probably like when you start getting into the like details at the end and the highlights and all those little things that kind of just push it over the edge. Or like, with paint, sometimes I feel like it gets a little like fluffy, for lack of a better word, like a little hazy or a little like undefined. So going back in with certain like finer brushes to like really make things a little sharper.
Yeah.
Especially with hands, like they can kind of get a little fuzzy real fast and you're like, oh, nope, they're
right.
really defined. Like hands are one of those things that you can't really fuzz.
I feel like that's maybe also in our illustration training, just because a lot of illustration is going to have sort of an outline. And so we like that look. And I particularly like this in paintings where areas of it are soft without outlines,
yes.
and then some areas with outlines. I just think is a very interesting look to like lead the person's eye around to just these little sharp areas.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. What was I going to say? Oh, so I saw on your Instagram that recently you did a couple of paintings for a church downtown. How did that start? That's interesting.
Oh, it's actually not a church. It's actually for my choir.
Oh, okay.
So my choir director, Tegan Miller, she commissioned me. She commissions both like the music for the choir. It's a feminist choir.
Okay.
And she's really, the mission is about like having us sing underrepresented composers and living composers. And so she really just carries that through with everything, even including the poster art.
Yeah.
So, so the commissions were actually just for the posters.
Okay.
For that.
And it's a place on Waters Avenue?
Asbury Memorial is just the church that we are utilizing the space for.
Okay, that's where I got that.
Yeah. That's where it. Yeah, so it's not religious at all. It's not religious or affiliated in that way. It's just the place that we sing.
So if women are looking to join a choir, can they?
Yes.
Is this open?
Yes.
For you all?
It'll start back up in the fall. And so Spectra Choir.
Nice.
Is the choir.
So you did the art for the posters.
Yes.
That's so cool. Have you seen it printed out yet? Or?
Yeah, they've been all up around town. We had our concert was May 3rd. So the most recent commission, the way that she does the concerts is like there's a fall semester and a spring semester, and they're usually thematically linked, and so both of the paintings are somewhat thematically linked as well.
Yeah, well, I love that your art seems like it would lend itself so well to that, where it's people together and they're like a really cool embrace where you see one person and you see the back of the other person. So that's been fun to depict.
Well, it was
like
this
yin yang.
Concert was all about connection, and one of the songs was called Hands, and I forget the composer. Don't kill me, Tegan. But it was a song that was kind of created for this worldwide choral event, and all of the singers were going to be from all over, and she didn't want to write a song. I think she was supposed to use English as the language, but it didn't feel right to the composer, so it didn't use any words, just on sort of a vowel.
It was almost like chanting,
on like a da da da, and it was really it's one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard, and it was about connection and kind of I think she talked about like the feeling like when you're just holding a friend's hand, like walking through a park, and that feeling of connection, and so that's sort of why the artwork was depicted the way it was. Yeah. So
you're busy. So you have a day job, and then on the weekends you go paint, and then you're also in this choir.
Yeah, well, yeah, and like I'll paint sometimes in the mornings or the evenings too, before or after work. But yeah, I am really busy.
Do you ever sit in there and just use it as your office for your day job? Or?
Yeah, sometimes I'll go in there, but I'm also on calls all the time, and so I really try I feel bad just being on my work calls, like chatting the whole day through. Not that I think that I have a door now, so like I don't bother too many people. But yeah, I'm in there sometimes, not all the time. But it's a really great place to be.
And is Cedar House? Do they have regular hours where people, if they want to come and tour your studio or someone else's, that on the weekends they can just come see it?
So they don't have regular hours. It's sort of like sometimes we'll have shows, like student shows. Like there's a really great one there right now. I think it's getting taken down today, called Tether. But basically when there's a show in the gallery, sometimes there'll be open hours on the weekends where people can come through.
Yeah.
But usually every first Friday the gallery is open, the studios are open.
Okay.
To the public.
Or if somebody really wanted to see your work, can they message you through
Oh,
Instagram?
absolutely.
Just
Like I'm,
arrange.
especially like I'm there on weekends, so if people want to come to the studio.
Yeah.
I'm happy. Like I have a big squishy chair and a half for people who visit.
Nice.
Because it can be kind of lonely in there sometimes. So I always highly encourage
people
visitors.
hang out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess in this season right now where it's like graduation time, I guess this is the time where there's going to be frequent where students rent the space to put on their shows.
Yeah.
So this is a good time. And you recently had at Cedar House Gallery, you guys had a call for entry for someone they were awarding like a studio space for a queer artist.
Yeah.
Who is it who got the studio space?
I believe someone that you've had on the podcast before, Julia Rowland.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Her work's awesome. We're so happy to have her there. And so we're also doing this call for entry for the month of June. It will be sort of a celebration of queer artists and allies. And all the proceeds for the commission of those works that are sold will go to the Pride Center, who have like a new mission, by the way, to help provide medical care for the queer community in the South.
Oh,
so
that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's sort of completely revamped, and they're doing a lot in that space.
Yeah.
So
it's very direct application of the funds that they get.
Yep.
So this episode comes out on Wednesday, May 21st. And so the end of this call for entries, I guess, is the 22nd. So people will have a day to enter. And then what, do you have the dates yet of when the show will be so people can come see the show?
I believe the opening reception will be June 6th. Okay. Whatever that Friday
Like
is.
a first Friday.
Yeah, first Friday of June.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. And this will be like work all throughout the downstairs of Cedar House, I guess.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, and we're going to arrange the gallery by color. It's called Spectrums, the show, so it'll be sort of a representative of the Pride flag.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Is your work going to be in the purple zone?
Yeah, I think I have a piece that's that people might have seen before, but that larger work, I'm probably going to submit that. I don't know if it's in yet. I'll have to wait to hear back. There's a couple others that I might also submit, but yeah, probably.
What are you so looking ahead as like goals for the new year? I know you said you had these huge canvases that you've gotten. How big were they again? The big square one?
So I have a 48 by 48 that's supposed to be me and my wife.
Okay. So someone else is going to need to photograph you for that.
I have this old photo of us from a vacation that we took, and we're kind of drinking this drink together, and it kind of reminds me of the Lady and the Tramp with the meatballs. Yeah. I don't know, just kind of like we're just looking at each other, and to be loved is to be seen. And in that moment, I think we both felt very seen and just loved, and you can feel it. So that's the photo I want to work.
That's a good name for a show. To be loved is to be seen.
I know, yeah. So that's probably the next one, but the larger ones that I ordered from that website, I don't know when those are going to be done.
Okay.
I'm also trying to work small, right? Because I'm also learning, like, in order to sell work, you have to have some balance of small works. I can't just work on this monumental scale, or I will literally never make any money from painting. And you do need money to keep the practice going, right? And so it's been a little bit of a balance, but I think that's where my love for hands is going to be okay, because people seem to really connect with that. And so I'll do some smaller hand works, which is what I've been working on. I actually finished one yesterday. Keep doing those works as smaller things that I can sell locally, and then while I work on the big things.
Do you have still for sale any of your the pieces from the original hand series or the fabric series, or do you still have any of those available?
The original hand series all sold.
Great.
Which is amazing. There are 3 or 4 of the fabric study paintings left.
Okay. So people can come in and see those in person. They're very cool. I'll post photos of those.
Yeah. One of them is at actually Sulphur with Adrian. We did a little art swap. So
yeah. Are you interested in curating shows on your own? Is that a thing?
Yeah. I mean,
because you seem like you have such a you have this wide tapestry, this big network in town, and you like collaborating with other artists and paying them to help as getting your work together too. So I see you putting together this lots of different media together in a show, like that you just know lots and lots of people, and that you seem like you're really good at looking at a theme and organizing around that.
Yeah, I think like I really feel grateful for Sam and then another artist at Cedar House, Eric.
Oh, yeah, he's in the attic.
Yeah, he's in the attic, and you know, I think we're like looking to see how we can utilize Cedar House in a better way to serve more of the community and more artists, and to have more shows and events. So I think there will be more beyond just the Pride show in June. And then there's always the local artist showcase that Cedar House does, usually in January, February.
Okay.
But yeah, I would love to curate more shows. I mean, I think the community aspect is taking me a little while to build after moving here, right? Because COVID, and it was just felt kind of slow, honestly, for me, to feel connected in that way and feel like I could do something like that. But I think that the heart of my work is connection, right? I want to paint relationships. I want to meet people through the work and tell the stories. And I want to do that same thing at a community level. And so that's really my goal over time, is to just connect with other artists, connect with people, whether it's the models, whether it's photographers, whether it's other painters. It doesn't really matter what the medium is. I think that's kind of the point of living, is connection.
Yeah, and it's time, is in our current political moment where queer people are really under attack. So this is really important, what you're doing and what you're depicting, and just like the beauty and magicalness and loveliness of it.
Yeah, I think it's also just like important for people to see. It's the visibility of it that matters. I think when I was first talking to Rob Hessler about the show back in 2023, people need to get used to seeing the art, right? And seeing people as people. And I think that's one of the reasons why the hand paintings have really, people connect with them so much, is that like you don't know when you're looking at a pair of hands that they're queer hands, right? You just see like loving hands. And I think that's kind of the point, right? Like love is love, people are people, and it doesn't really matter who they are or who they choose to love. That shouldn't matter, right? And it's sad that it does, but oftentimes, like, I think art and getting used to seeing it is what is going to desensitize people who are unfamiliar with it or against it for whatever reason.
If you need a really easy entry point, then something focusing just on a pair of hands is an easy.
Yeah, but I also like stage. Eventually I just want it to be more normalized. Like I think like we just need more queer art, and for people to be around it and see it and love it, right? And I want these paintings to like end up in, you know, big lobbies of places, and like you should be able to walk into a hotel and just see like this big giant piece of art of, you know, queer people loving each other, right? And it's not a big deal, just like it's not a big deal for when you see that type of artwork for anyone else. So that's kind of the goal, is just to like make us more visible. And I don't actually care if it's palatable. I just want to celebrate the community and get everyone their stories out.
It's an antidote. I always hate this expression if somebody says like, oh, it's fine if people are doing that, but I just don't want it shoved in my face. But nobody's shoving anything in their face. They're just living their life,
right,
doing their thing, and you happen to maybe be around them the way you're around lots of other couples.
Yeah, and I do kind of want to shove it in people's face. I in the same way that like it is shoved in everyone's face. Love is everywhere, right? And you know, I think that it should just be celebrated. Like people should just be celebrated regardless. And that's kind of my hope, is to just keep celebrating these people who are living their truth, and maybe help. I think it also it's helpful for others, right? Because there's a moment where when you're queer and you realize you're a little different, and you want so desperately to find other people like you. And where do you even go about doing that if people aren't living out, right? And I think in this climate, in this administration, and the situations that are going on politically, it's going to be so easy to want to withdraw, to want to hide, to want to be safe.
Right.
But I think it's more important than ever to be as loud as possible if you can. And I feel like I'm in a privileged enough place where I'm going to do that. I'm going to be loud about it. I'm going to make art about it, and I'm not going to stop.
Yeah. It's nice there's always going to be more kids and young people coming up who are starting to have these feelings for themselves. It's nice for them to have something to look at and to know that like that phrase, that it gets better and that they can have nice relationships, and they're not going to be hiding their feelings to themselves forever.
Yeah. I remember like the feeling that I felt when I first saw like a Kiande Wiley painting in person, and I was like, wow, I don't think I've ever like seen art like this at this monumental scale for Black people. My mom's Black, so like I just remember growing up and just seeing a lot of white people in museums, right? And I want to do the same thing, but for the queer community.
Yeah. And I think, the scale also matters a lot too.
Yeah.
Making it this larger than life thing.
I think everyone should see art that's like larger than life that they relate to. I think it's so powerful. Yeah.
That is, like you said, the shoving it in people's face. That does a lot.
A
huge painting in like the lobby of a building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, why not? I guess is really where I'm at. It's just why not?
Yeah. Well, I love that. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me about this.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So yes, everybody can keep an eye out for the first Friday of June is going to be the reception for, what is the name of the show again?
Spectrum.
Okay, at Cedar House. And then in general that people can see you on Instagram. If they want to come see your work in person, they can reach out to you through Instagram, and that there's a page on your website where if couples want to model, that they can submit their modeling
couples or platonic friendships.
Oh, nice.
Or any kind of queer relationship. I'm interested in hearing about it. I had someone, what was their name? I think Keyshawn. I just met them at Cedar House, and they were telling me like, I'm in a relationship with myself. And I was like, you know what? I love that. And I kind of want to paint you now. Yeah. And it's still a relationship with yourself. I want to paint that part. So really I'm kind of open. As far as, just come talk to me about your relationships and why they're special.
Very cool. I love that. Like, it's the entire concept of relationship. Basically, you're playing with.
Yeah, and
it's
connection.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. So this has been Jazz Howington, and thanks so much for listening. Thanks for being here, Jazz.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. And this is Tamara Garvey, and you've been listening to Art on the Air.